Hello and welcome to my channel. A couple weeks ago, I saw an article in the Cut magazine, and the article was talking about modern dating. And the article featured a video that had gone viral on TikTok about a month before. And it was of a woman who was around 32 years old, and she was bawling her eyes out because she had attempted to go out. She lived in Austin, Texas, and she's been single for 7 years. And she attempted to go out one night and do things that she doesn't normally do. So she's tried the activity clubs, she's done the online dating, and it hasn't worked. So she said, well, why don't I go to eat dinner, and then I'm going to go to a comedy show by myself. However, she apparently had a night where she was made to feel embarrassed at the comedy show, and she came home and she cried about it on the internet. She was like, I just feel so lost. I don't know what to do. I'm having such a hard time. Dating is so hard. It's so hard to meet people. I hate being single. It's just so hard. But I see people sharing this story all the time, and I definitely feel a type of way. I definitely feel like a kindred spirit with them. But I disagree that the problem is modern dating. I disagree that the biggest issue here is that it's hard. The issue to me is not that modern dating is hard, but it's that it's not hard for everyone. When something is a problem, but it's not a problem for everyone, we don't know how to respond to it as a society. When you have somebody who's 32 who's crying about being single for 7 years, and then you have somebody who's 32 who is married on their second husband, their fourth home, and their third baby, it's just very hard as a society to know what is the truth. Is it modern dating or is it you? So first of all, let me talk about some of the issues that happen when modern dating isn't hard for everyone, or when dating isn't hard for everyone. I think the first issue that we run into as a society is that people who are having a hard time are invalidated. So for example, if you go to that girl's comment section, you see a lot of people who understand. They're like, yeah, we get it. We got you. Like, it is tough. Thank you for sharing this. Like, yes, sister, we understand. But then you have the inevitable, well, it wasn't hard for me. And then they start, after they do that, so after they invalidate this woman's experience, then they start with what's wrong with her that made her experience bad, or that makes her experience bad. So it's everything from she's not manifesting, which when somebody says that, it makes me want to jump out of a window and roll in glass. I love the fact that as a society about 10, 15 years ago, hell, 20 years ago, whenever The Secret came out, I love the fact that so many people leaned into manifestation. I definitely have my beliefs about it, and most of them are favorable. But one thing I cannot stand is the blaming that people that are very much into manifestation do. If they see that your life has not turned out in accordance with your desires, everything is your fault. I could go off on a tangent, but I really hate when somebody's clearly suffering and they're trying. I hate when somebody comes in and says, well, you just didn't want it bad enough. You're not asking with enough pure intention. You must really think that you don't deserve it. What bullshit. And how is that helpful? It's not. So you have that way of invalidating her. And then you have people who are picking her story apart. And they were like, well, in the story you said that as you were sitting there and you were having a drink, an old man came up to you. Why wasn't he good enough? Now, y'all know she was trying to meet somebody that she actually might want to date. I definitely agree that sometimes we say, oh, I want to meet new people. We meet people, but we definitely have in our mind who we're actually looking for. And of course, the manifestation warriors would come in and they would say, well, you got to be clear. And sometimes even when you're clear, you wanted to go out and you wanted to meet so on and so forth. You could still just not meet that person. Like, it happens. Why can't we just accept the fact that this young woman went out? She had an idea of what she wanted in her head. It didn't happen. It hasn't been happening for about 7 years. But there's no mercy and no grace and no empathy when people want to come in and invalidate your pain and invalidate your story. And that's only in this young woman's situation. I see this a lot. I see this a lot with men doing this with women on the internet. Somebody left a comment in my comment section a couple weeks ago, and it was something along the lines of, and it was on one of my videos. So it was actually an older video. And they said, hey, gosh, if only women would prioritize having babies and getting married in their 20s. That's the problem with modern women these days. They just don't prioritize it. And unfortunately for them, their window closes, So I don't know, modern feminism, it taught, and this man just going off on a tangent. And I'm like, so no matter how many times we as women come forward and say, we did try, we did prioritize, but it wasn't working out. So we said, let me go to college. Let me get another degree. It wasn't working out. So we said, let me try a different career path. It wasn't working out. So we said, let me try a different city. We can come to you with our stories and how we did try and how we froze our eggs and but yet you still find a way to say, oh, well, I guess you guys just weren't focused. And I think he thinks that way. And I think a lot of men tend to think that way because in their minds, they still believe that women have the upper hand when it comes to reproduction and when it comes to picking and choosing a mate for that purpose or for any purpose. Men tend to believe, and I think this is a very caveman way of thinking. And I actually remember when I was in college, my biology teacher said this. He said, in most animal kingdoms, including the human one, women are responsible for reproduction. They're responsible for choosing who, they mate with. So women, you have all the power. And I'm like, yeah, but we live in a patriarchal society. Like, sure, we're still animals working in an animal kingdom. And, we definitely choose who we want to mate with based on things that we as women hold near and dear. So men who can provide, men who can, whatever. But we live in a patriarchal society, which means that men also have a great deal of power. They also play into the situation in a big way. Why is that part never in their heads when they then comment on the lives of women? As if they don't all go after the same type of woman, as if they don't start to rebel against the ideals and ideologies that that have been set up by men through time. I know a lot of us probably a couple weeks ago saw the boyfriend of Monet McMichael, Jalen Noble, get on a podcast. And now he said a lot of actually really great things on that podcast too, but I'm not here to argue in defense of Jalen. All I will say is we all probably saw the soundbite where he was going off about men being the providers and why are men expected to do this and why does it have to do this and why do we think this way? Women can try and pick. We can try and say this is who we want. It doesn't mean that the men get on board. I feel like when we are in that spirit of invalidation and we're saying, okay, this is the only narrative we're sticking to. It's not hard. You're making it up. You're not manifesting. Women aren't choosing right. It's your fault. That lack of a cohesive narrative comes from people just experiencing and existing within different realities. And then as a society, we don't know how to respond to people when they're in pain and when they're saying, hey, this is hard for me. And I think that that's really unfortunate. Another way that it can suck when everybody's not all on the same page and everybody's not having a hard time is for those of us who are single or you're doing whatever, it can be hard to know who to get advice from. So I know for me, when I was younger, a big thing that I would do all the time is I would always ask people, basically the youths today would say it as, give me your game card. I want to know your game card. Like, how'd you do this? But I would always ask people with anything like, okay, so how did you get there? So how did you walk that path? I became a teacher because while I was in this really crappy internship, when I graduated college, I ran into this lady who worked there as like a professor, as like a producer. And she came and like handed me some tape so I could like log tape. And I see she's pregnant and, whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because that was big on my mind at 23. I was like, I definitely want to have a baby today, so she's interesting to me. And she hands me the tape and I ask her, I'm like, hey, how'd you start working as a producer, like full time? Like, how'd you get this job? And she goes, well, actually, I graduated college. I did television and film. I think we had gone to the same college. And she was like, there was no jobs. I was like, amen. And she goes, and so I actually taught English for 2 years. And then I went to grad school at the University of Texas. And then I came and I got this job as a producer. And I was like, ding, ding, ding. That's what I'm going to do. And I said, you know what? So many people in my life are being teachers as a stepping stone to getting to somewhere else. And so that's what I'll do. I will go in, I will be a teacher, and then I'll go to grad school. And then things went a different way for me. But when I was younger, I would always ask people that, how did you get to your career? What did you, and whatever they did, I would try and model it because I had no idea how to make things happen for myself. And one of those things that I also used to ask about all the time was, when did you get into your relationship? What age were you? How did it, So if somebody said they met their person at 24, when I was like 20, I'm like, okay, 24. Okay, I'm looking out for that. I'm looking out for 24, 24 came and went. If somebody said, well, I didn't meet my person until I was like, I think it was 27, 28. I'm like, 27, 28. Here we go. Gotta wait for that. If somebody said, if I figured out what their birthday was and I did like their numerology, and I noticed, hey, she met him in a year 3. Okay, year 3. Gotta wait for that. Hey, she met him in a year 6. All right, year 6. Let's hold on. Here we go. Year 6. I would always try and look to the future, look to people who have been successful, so I knew who to get advice from. And what happens when you continue to get older and things don't happen? People don't enter the picture. It's hard to know, well, who can I ask? What you start to realize is everybody's path is different. You can take someone's game card. They can tell you what they did. Hey, all I did was, you can try that. I remember one time the girl that met her husband at 24, she said, actually what happened with me was I had a really bad breakup when I was like, well, not a bad breakup. Her fiance had passed away. She was like, and it was just so hard on me. And I just prayed to God. I said, God, the next man I meet, he needs to be my husband because I can't take this no more. That's what I did. And the next man I met was my husband. And I was like, I got you, girl. You know, she was the Sierra's prayer for me before there was a Sierra's prayer, okay? When she told me that, Sierra was still dancing and twerking on top of cars, all right? Talking about some goodies. So this is back in the day. So I said, okay, you know, God, the next man I meet, I need him to be my husband. Years have passed, right? So what you start to realize is, damn, you know, everybody, there are some people who have a really easy time, like their life just takes off, like they do whatever, and you don't know who to get advice from. I think this really sticks out to me when I'll be on social media and I'll see videos like the ones I have on the screen right now, and someone will be like, oh, I was 27 and I was so old. And, you know, I thought I would never meet anyone. And, you know, it's never too late. And I'm like, stairs and 40. Okay. Never too late. Or these are the ones that I know would have really lifted my spirit if I was in my early 30s. So if I was the age of the young woman who initially uploaded her crying video. When someone is like 36, 37, and they're like, hey, I thought it would never happen for me. And then, you know, that powerful, and then, right? You know, I thought I would never and by the time I was 40, I was married. I had 2 babies. Everything worked out. It's not too late, girls. It can still happen. Whew, that is tough. I know for me, those are tough to watch. I scroll. I be wanting to block the person. It takes everything in me not to write in the comment section, you're giving false hope. This is your path, not everyone. You know, and then I say, hey, girl, chill out. They're trying to come from their situation and give the hope that they would have wanted to receive at that time. Because I will say this, even if it doesn't work out the way that the people who have given you the advice, the way that it's still like having the hope, having the belief that, okay, hey, this person didn't meet, it didn't happen for them until they were, you know, 37. So there's still time. There's still hope. It's so helpful. But when everybody's not having a hard time and when people are receiving things at different times and things are going, it can be very hard to know, who do I look for to that hope? Who can I ask for advice? Because you got some people that are like, hey, we just looked across the room at each other and we just knew. You got some people who are like, hey, the first day we met, we got married 2 weeks later. You got some people who are like, oh, we had to date for like 6 years. It was ups and downs and girl, we went through it. You know, when we can't get a clear narrative, when there's not one, it's very hard to know how to respond to each other. It's hard to know who you can go to for advice. Who can you look at? It's very hard. And like I said earlier, what you figure out is my path is going to be my path. And all I can do is tell my story. That's it. And that's hard, because when you're really going through it, sometimes your story sucks so bad. You're like, I don't want to tell nobody this. And as humans, we need the good stories to keep us going. But when you're going through it and your good story has not arrived or it's not coming, it's just difficult. Okay, y'all know I love a list. I love 3 things. So the last way that it's very difficult when you're talking about modern dating, because everybody's not having a hard time, is that it can be hard to relate to people who haven't been in the same space. One of my favorite songs is from the early 2000s by a band called Explosions in the Sky. I think it's called Have You Walked Through This Night? I might be way out of my, y'all, we might really not be connecting here, but those kind of just musical like soundscape bands were a big deal in the 2000s. They were part of a lot of movie soundtracks and TV show soundtracks. And I love that song by Explosions in the Sky because when I was in my early 20s, I went through something that was really, really hard. And I knew it's going to be tantamount to connection for me that I find people who have walked through this night, who know what it's like to have gone through something like this. Because when you can't relate your stories, I think it's great to be able to relate in joy, but it's also important to relate in sadness as well. And specifically, we are talking about a sad thing, having trouble dating or whatever. It can be just so hard to find people that relate to you when everybody isn't having a hard time. I'll never forget, I had a friend who always said she hated being a mom. She had a child when she was not expecting it when she was younger, and she hated it. And she used to send me documents and paperwork from the internet. This is back in the day. She was joining Facebook groups that were titled like, I hate being a mom. And this is around the time of my life where I was getting ready to kidnap a baby off the street. I wanted to have a baby so bad. But she hated, she never wanted to be a mom. She was like, I hated it. This is not what I want. I don't want this. But she liked dating and she liked sex. So she was like, the next guy I meet, he's going to have to already have kid. Like, he's going to have to know kids are off the table. I never. So some things happened in our friendship. We separated, and she ended up, well, I didn't talk to her for years. Well, one day a mutual of us told me, hey, so-and-so added me on LinkedIn. And I was like, oh, okay. How's she doing? She said, she's doing all right, but she's in this picture with all these kids. And I was like, oh, she must have found her guy then who had, his family, and they just merged families. So, well, that's what she wanted. She didn't want to have no more, but she was very like, she did want to get married. She did, she did say if he already has kids, like, I'll definitely take care of him, do whatever. Right. So I was like, oh, okay, good for her. So my friend says, I don't think that they were that man's kids. I think that they're hers. I'm like, well, I don't think so, because she said she didn't want that. That's not what she wanted. She was very against it. There was a time where she had brought her child over and the child was crying and she had a breakdown. She was like, I hate this. This is what I hate. I cannot stand this. Why won't they go to sleep? Why? So I picked the child up and took the child into like my study, and I sat down at this little desk that I had at the time. And I figured that the kid was a lot like their mom. And she loved to party. She loved socializing, whatever. And the baby they were in a new place. They were in a new bed. It was a new environment. And they just needed a little bit of assurance that no more weird things were going to go on without them. Like they weren't missing out on anything. Like, it was okay. And when I tell y'all I was ready in my 20s, I was ready. I was watching like bedtime routine videos. I was ready. I just knew, this is gonna happen for me any day now. So I'm ready. So the baby didn't want to go to sleep. I noticed that she didn't do anything from my videos. She didn't play like soothing noises and the lighting in the room with that where was it, whatever. So I took the child out and I put on a YouTube video of just ocean sounds, and that baby fought me. That they fought sleep so bad, but eventually they did go to sleep, and I brought the child back into the room with their mother. And I remember my friend was like, "What, you good with kids or something? What is this?" And what she didn't know was that I'm not good with kids necessarily, but I want this so badly that I'm already preparing myself. And you were kind of shoved into it because things happen, but I've been studying. So I've been preparing for such a time as this. So that's why, whatever. So I didn't say all that. I was like, no, I just figured that they were a lot like their mom and they just needed a little bit more time to settle down before they go to sleep. So anyway, years later, my friend sends me this person's photos and stuff on their professional page. And I'm like, son of a bitch. All them kids in the picture look just like this girl. So my friend who said, I don't want kids. I went out, found a man, got married, had more babies in the time that we hadn't talked. And y'all, that pissed me off so bad. That made me so mad. And my friend was like, well, you can't be, honestly, you have not because you ask not. I said, girl, stop it right there. I said, I have literally cried myself to sleep. I said, I have had to walk away. I said, I have prayed for God to take the desire away because there's nothing that's being done about it. I have grieved. And I was talking to a person who didn't really want kids. So she couldn't understand why I was so she only wanted them if she was going to marry, if she was already married and her husband asked her, whatever. But I was like, I hit the block and that's what I wanted. And I listened with a compassionate and empathetic ear when my friend, who now had a whole family, when she said she didn't want this, she shoved it, she didn't want it. I listened, and I realized, you know what, everybody's not made like me that has, you know, whatever. And now I'm looking, and in spite of her, whatever, she has all this stuff, all of these things. Oh man, I was hurt. And I'll never forget, the friend came back at me and she said, well, she just, the universe, the universe doesn't understand no, and I don't want. All the universe hears, I said, girl, shut up. I'm tired of it. I don't want to hear it anymore. I asked. I did, it reminded me of that scene where, in Sex and the City, where Charlotte and Carrie go to this like dating thing, and this lady's like, she's like a dating guru. She's like, you have to do this, this, and this. And Charlotte raised her hand and she's like, actually, I did all that and I got my heart broken and I don't understand. I followed this. And the lady says, well, you must have not done it right. You must have not done it right. And Charlotte's like, oh, and she sits down, and Carrie's like, no. People be hating on Carrie these days, but whatever. Carrie's like, no. She grabs the microphone and she's like, she's doing it. She's out there. She tries. You're not going to sit up here and say, my friend doesn't walk the walk. My friend does not. You're not going to do that to her. And the reason why Carrie was able to do that is because she was in it too. She was trying to. I think it's so important to have people when you're walking through the night, when you're struggling, that say, me too. And so when everybody's not having a hard time, that understanding is not always there. So you come to somebody and you're in pain and you're struggling. You're like, I'm disappointed. Why didn't this happen to me? And they hit you with, well, you have not because you ask not. Maybe the universe, again, it makes me want to jump out of a window and roll in glass. It is just that's not what I need to hear. So here's how I have dealt with being someone who is on the tougher side and knowing that I live in a society where people like to invalidate it, where people are not having the same, so I don't know who to ask for advice because ain't nobody living my story like I'm living my story. And where it's hard sometimes to relate to people who have not walked through the night that I walked through. I remember when I had a miscarriage, I didn't know who to talk to. I wasn't around anybody who'd been through that. And I wasn't around people who had wanted kids as badly as I did, only for that to happen. And I mean, honestly, the way that I cope with it is, well, number one, putting my neuroses and my complaints on the internet, for better or for worse. And number two, through that process, hearing back a faint echo. Hey girl, me too. I've been there. I'm blessed. As somebody said the other day, they said, sometimes you have to be the first person that shows up. Sometimes you're gonna be the first person that shows up like you, and other people will come. And I think when I first was talking about my particular situations or whatever a couple years ago, it wasn't a lot of folks. But now I'm seeing more people just be open about, hey, this is tough. Hey, I'm having a hard time. Hey, I prayed for this thing and it didn't happen. I found this great YouTube channel the other day, if you happen to be like a very spiritual, a very Christian person, and it's Christian women. And one of the videos they have is, I am child-free, not by choice, grieving the mother I wanted to be. And I was like, what's this? And so I clicked on it, and it's all women who are from the church, who are Christian, who are like, hey, this is what it's like not having a blessing answer. This is what it's like dealing with that grief in a religious environment. This is what it's like. And I'm like, yes. Because sometimes those are the worst environments to be dealing with things like infertility, whether it be biological or circumstantial. Sometimes those are the worst places because people just, they have not walked through that night and they don't know what it's like. And so, yeah, one of the things I've done is obviously like be very open. If I'm feeling the feeling, share it, and just hope that those voices will show up. Hope that support will show up. And the other thing I think is validate my own story. So if people want to say, oh, well, the reason, she just didn't give, she didn't prioritize, the reason why is because you don't. No, that's not it. Thank you. Try again. I know what happened, and it's not whatever the hell you're saying. So thank you. Try again. When people, if it comes down to advice, allowing people to give the advice that works for them, knowing that might not be what works for me. And that's been very hard, but that is definitely something that I've done. Hey, if you think that, what all people need to do is, my dad always says, all you need to do is go out in the world with some capri pants on and your Bible and a bob haircut and a lemonade. This is what he really thinks. And have a seat somewhere, and you probably meet your man. That's what my dad thinks. So yeah, allow people to give their advice to come from their point of success, even if it's not what's going to work for me, because hey, it's good to hear other people's stories. That's great. And also, I understand that human beings tend to run on something called a survivorship bias. There is a song that I love from the early 2000s. It's by Jimmy Eat World. It's called Futures. And the lyrics of the song, one of the lyrics are, the past is taught by those who win. And that has always stuck with me anytime, especially anytime people talk about dating, anytime, no matter how many stories we have like that young woman, no matter how many people we have that prayed, that asked and nothing happened, no matter how many people we have that struggled past the age where it was acceptable to struggle, no matter how many people had to say, God damn, this is tough. This dating world, this thing got hands. And yet we still come back with, no. It's got to be you. It's your fault. It's all on you. You're the one. We do that because we want to hear from the winners, because they give us the hope that we need to keep going forward, right? So I always have to remember, whenever people are peopling, I'm sharing my story or somebody else is sharing, people start peopling and they start invalidating, doing whatever. This is because humans need to hear from the winners. They're the ones that we trust to teach us the past, even if that's not the entire narrative, because we need that to keep moving forward. We need that to keep trying. We don't sign up for a dating app because we think we're going to be abducted and they're going to find our body in the forest. No, we sign up for a dating app because you have this many people who signed up and got married and met someone, right? We don't go out to a nightclub because we want to end up on Dateline. We go out to a nightclub because, well, so-and-so's parents met, they saw each other across the street at a bar. We tend to listen to and cling on to the success stories. And that is for better or for worse, because that means that when somebody is having a harder time, and they need a witness, and they need support, and they need care, it can be hard to find that, because we so badly as humans need to believe that no, everything works out, everything ends up where it's supposed to be, people get what they want, because those are the kind of stories that help us move forward. But I, as somebody who has not had that reality, I have made the decision to validate both. I know that it can be tough. I know that things don't always come full circle. I know that people don't always get what they want. And I know that life can go on after that. And that's a hard thing to come to grips with for most people. And that's why they don't. And that's why they don't validate when those things are happening or when that's the truth. And it's definitely a hard thing for somebody to try and come to grips with at 32 years old. There's one thing I want to say before I wrap this video up. Be aware of having your foot too far into either side of this conversation, whether it's the side that is having a really easy time. I remember a few weeks ago, someone was like, I don't know what y'all talking about. I ain't never had to pay for no date. I ain't never had to pay my bills. Ain't no man. Good for you, sweetie. Your cookie's in the mail. Thank you. And on the other hand, you don't want to always listen to people who are like, and then he robbed me. Right? It's balance is important. Both sides are important. It takes all kinds. So I really encourage people not to just get wrapped up in this narrative that modern dating is just terrible and horrible, because it's not. It's not for everybody. And it's not even for everybody all of the time. You can have 1 year where it's like, I'm getting dogged out here. And the next year, it'd be the best year of your romantic life. You never know. No matter what season you happen to be in your life, I think it's important to remember that there are two sides to every story, and both sides are valid. And especially if you're going through it and you're struggling, you're not by yourself, and it's not always your fault. I'm not going to say it's not your fault, because I don't know what's specifically happening in your situation, but I know that tends to be something that people say when they haven't walked through that night, when they don't know what it's like to get ghosted, to get lied to get, oh, it's your fault, you didn't. Don't take that on. It is tough. It is hard, but not for everyone. So be careful who you share your story with, and really, really work hard to find people who can understand, because those are going to be the people that get you from hopefully crying at the end of a night that you've spent going out and not accomplishing what you want, to being the type of person who shares their success story, if that's in your future, right? hopefully it is. All right, that is the end of my take on this. Please feel free to share whatever side you're on in the conversation. Are you the kind of person that's had an easy time, or do you know what it's like to walk through this night? Both stories are valid. Both viewpoints are accepted and needed for it to be a real conversation and for us to really understand as a society how to respond. So that is the end of this video. As always, thank you for watching.